My daughter told me I should know my place, right after handing me a toilet brush to clean up after her rich mother-in-law. I'm 64. I raised Lauren alone. I gave her everything. Now she treats me like help in her spotless home, all to impress Blanche, the woman with the money. They had me scrubbing floors while sipping wine at a table I set, and when I overheard them say, "She's useful, quiet, obedient," I broke. But what they didn't know was that I still had access to the bank, to the records, and what I found wasn't just betrayal, it was crime. Now I'll take you through the steps I took, from humiliation to a silent war, from heartbreak to something so much colder. Stay with me, because the truth won't just surprise you, it will chill you, and maybe, just maybe, you'll see why I finally walked away and how I took everything down with me. I wasn't always this tired. There was a time I had dreams that kept me wide-eyed, feet that didn't ache after standing too long, and hope that felt endless. But life doesn't always honor what you give. Sometimes it just takes. I raised Lauren alone. Her father left when she was barely 5, leaving nothing but unpaid bills and an empty promise to send birthday cards he never mailed. I remember the day he drove away. Lauren clung to my skirt, asking if Daddy would be home by bedtime. I lied. I told her yes. Then I sat on the bathroom floor and cried until my lungs hurt. But the next morning, I made pancakes in a smiley face shape and braided her hair like nothing had shattered. I worked 2 jobs through her childhood, waitressing by day, janitorial shifts by night. I slept in 4-hour stretches. I skipped meals so she wouldn't have to. I watched from the sidelines as her world expanded. Ballet recitals, science fairs, class trips. I was never the mother who could volunteer at school events or bake for fundraisers. But I was always there when she got off the bus, always awake when she got sick in the middle of the night, always the one who kept the lights on. She was bright, ambitious, headstrong. I encouraged all of it. When she got into college, I cried, not just because I was proud, but because I wasn't sure how I'd afford it. But we made it work. Scholarships, grants, some loans, and me? I refinanced the house. Quietly. She never knew. I just wanted her to have every shot I didn't. When she graduated and told me she wanted to start her own design firm, I knew what that meant. No steady paycheck, no guaranteed success. But I believed in her. She was smart, stylish, driven. So I did the unthinkable. I sold the house, the one I'd paid off over 27 years. The one where her height was marked in pencil on the hallway wall. The one I thought I'd grow old in. It sold in 10 days. She cried when I gave her the check, said she didn't deserve me, that she'd pay me back someday. I smiled and told her she didn't need to. What else are mothers for? I rented a small 1-bedroom on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just a clean place with enough sunlight in the morning. I kept busy volunteering at the library, taking long walks, cooking for one. It was lonely, but it was peace. I had given, and she had soared. That should have been enough. But time has its ways. Joints that once served me well began to fail. After years of pushing through pain, I finally scheduled the knee replacement I'd been putting off for years. The surgery went well. The recovery didn't. Living alone became difficult. Too many stairs. Too many days without help. Lauren insisted that I move in with her and Jonathan. "It'll just be a few months while you heal," she said. "We have the space, and you deserve to rest." I hesitated. I liked my independence. I liked my privacy. But part of me was touched, maybe even relieved. So I packed a few boxes and moved into the guest room upstairs in their pristine house with its white carpets and too many throw pillows. At first it was kind. They brought me tea, checked on my bandages, helped with physical therapy appointments. Lauren still called me Mom in that soft tone that made me feel 10 feet tall. But something shifted over time, subtly. A request here, a chore there. "Could you unload the dishwasher while we're at work? Would you mind vacuuming if you're up to it?" And I said yes, of course. I wanted to be helpful, to contribute, to not feel like a burden. Soon those small asks turned into expectations, unspoken but loud in their absence of gratitude. Then came Blanche, Lauren's mother-in-law, rich, powerful, the kind of woman who walked into a room like it owed her something, the kind of woman Lauren wanted approval from more than anything. I was told Blanche would be visiting, that everything had to be perfect, that the house had to shine. I offered to help without hesitation, but something about how Lauren looked at me when she accepted that offer, it made me feel small, like I wasn't her mother anymore, just someone staying under her roof. I didn't know then that that night would break something in me. I didn't know I'd come to see just how far gratitude could disappear and how far love could sink beneath ambition. But we're not there yet. We're still here, at the beginning of the end, where I still believed helping her was love, and where I still thought love might someday circle back. Some nights, when the house was still and sleep wouldn't come, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling fan and think about Dr. Alan Reese. He was kind, gentle, widowed young with no children. We met during a flu outbreak when I was working the night janitorial shift at the clinic. He'd always say, "You clean with more care than most people treat patients." And I thought he was just being sweet, but one day he left a flower taped to my mop handle and asked if I'd like to have dinner. I said no the first 3 times. I had Lauren, and a strict rule about not bringing men around her unless it was serious. But Alan was persistent in the gentlest way. He brought tea when I had a cold, read my favorite book just so we could talk about it. After 6 months, I let him meet her. She was 14, moody, suspicious. She barely looked up from her phone during dinner and later told me, "I don't want a new dad." I tried to explain that he wasn't trying to be her father, that he just made me laugh again, but she sulked for weeks, became cold, short-tempered. She stopped speaking to me for almost a month. Alan noticed. One night he said, "I care about you, Martha, but not enough to come between you and your daughter." He offered me a ring, small, elegant. I cried when I turned it down, but I couldn't lose Lauren. I couldn't risk her slipping away, so I chose her, without hesitation. Years later, after she married Jonathan, I saw Alan again, at their engagement party. He walked in behind Jonathan's mother, Blanche, hand in hand. My breath left my body. Lauren didn't even flinch. She didn't look surprised. She didn't even look uncomfortable. It was as if she'd known all along and said nothing. That night, I sat in the guest room, staring at the small velvet ring box I still kept in the back of my drawer. I'd never told Lauren I kept it, never told her that sometimes I wondered what might have been, but I'd made peace with the past, or so I thought. One rainy afternoon, I was sorting through an old box of keepsakes I'd brought from my old house. I didn't keep much when I moved in, just one box labeled Lauren Memories. Inside was her baby blanket, her kindergarten report card, and a folded letter with creases worn from too much touching. She wrote it the summer before college. After getting a scholarship, she swore she'd never win. "Dear Mom, I don't know how to say thank you for everything, for the meals you skipped so I could eat, for the nights you worked late so I could have books, for the dreams you gave up just to make mine happen. I hope one day I can make you proud the way you've always made me proud to be your daughter." I must have read it 100 times that day, each word soaked in sincerity. It was my anchor, my proof that everything I gave hadn't vanished into silence, that she knew, that she remembered. I slipped it into a small frame and kept it hidden in the back of my closet. Then last week, I couldn't find it. I checked every drawer, every box. I even emptied the laundry hamper, thinking maybe it got stuck somewhere. Finally, I opened the kitchen trash bin. There it was, crumpled, stained with coffee grounds, torn along the fold. My heart didn't break. It went still. I fished it out with trembling fingers, smoothing it on the counter. The ink had bled in places, but I could still make out the words. "Thank you. Proud. Mom." I didn't cry. Not then. I just stared at it, wondering why she'd thrown it away. Had she found it by accident? Was it intentional? Did she even remember writing it? The possibilities gnawed at me. Maybe she thought it was childish now. Maybe she was embarrassed. Or maybe it meant nothing to her anymore. That last thought gutted me. The letter had been a symbol of our bond, of our shared past, of her acknowledgement of the sacrifices I'd made. Seeing it in the trash felt like watching her cut that bond with scissors, clean and deliberate. I stood at the sink that night, holding the soggy paper, unsure whether to salvage it or let it dissolve. It didn't matter what I chose, because something already had dissolved. Respect, memory, gratitude, or maybe just my illusions about all three. The invitation had been printed on cardstock so thick it could have doubled as a cutting board. Blanche Whitmore didn't do anything halfway. Even informal family dinners required embossed stationery and RSVP instructions. Lauren displayed the card on the marble countertop like it was a museum piece. "She's expecting a flawless evening," Lauren said, running a hand through her sleek bob. "We need everything perfect." Everything perfected. That's where I came in. The morning of the dinner, I woke to a to-do list taped to the fridge. "Mom, can you please help with these? Love you." It had hearts drawn on it, which didn't soften the sharpness of what followed. "Polish all the wine glasses." Blanche notices spots. "Clean guest bathroom mirror. Must be streak-free. Beef Wellington, medium rare and not too pink. Asparagus trimmed exactly 4 inches. Chocolate souffle, risen, no cracks." By mid-afternoon, I'd completed the first 4. My knee ached, but I ignored it. The souffle was in the oven, delicate and temperamental. One wrong sound, one slammed cabinet, and it would collapse. Lauren walked in, inspecting the counter like a hotel manager before a 5-star review. "Mom, did you align the napkins with the dessert forks? And are the wine glasses done? I didn't check for spots yet." I bit back a sigh and nodded. She didn't notice. At 6 p.m., she handed me a small spray bottle and a microfiber cloth. "Blanche always freshens up before she leaves. Can you give the powder room a once-over? Especially the base of the toilet, it gets dusty." She said it like we were equals, like we were partners in preparing for royalty. But I wasn't standing beside her in a silk blouse. I was in orthopedic sneakers and a sweater 2 sizes too big, scrubbing the guest toilet. I told myself it was just one night, one dinner, one guest. But even as I knelt with my knees screaming, even as I wiped under a sink that sparkled already, I knew something had shifted. At 6:55, the bell rang. Lauren nearly squealed. "She's early, perfect!" Jonathan opened the door like a concierge. Blanche stepped in wearing a white wool coat, a brooch the size of a golf ball pinned at her collar. Her perfume preceded her, roses, powder, and quiet condescension. "Blanche!" Lauren beamed. "You look amazing." Blanche didn't respond. She handed me her coat without a glance, like I was invisible. I took it. Of course I did. I hung it in the hall closet and returned to the kitchen, where the souffle timer had just gone off. I removed it carefully, praying it hadn't fallen. It hadn't. One small victory. Dinner was served in courses just like Lauren planned. I floated in and out, bringing plates, clearing dishes, refilling drinks. When I sat briefly to rub my knee, Lauren gave me a look that said, "Get up." Blanche's commentary began with the appetizer. "Too much garlic in the dressing." Moved to the main course. "Beef's a shade dry." Then the wine glasses. "Water spots. Someone didn't polish." Lauren turned to me. "Mom, would you mind rewashing those real quick?" I did it. Quietly. Carefully. Even though I'd already washed them. Even though I'd checked each glass twice. Back at the table, Blanche was telling a story about her yacht trip. The staff on board were heavenly, anticipated everything. It's rare to find help like that these days. She glanced at me. Lauren laughed softly. "We're lucky to have Mom help out. She's always so thorough." I smiled. Tightly. Bitterly. Dessert was served without incident. For a moment, I thought maybe the worst was over. Then, Blanche placed her fork down and turned to Lauren. "I'd like to freshen up before I go. Could you make sure the powder room is spotless? The mirror was streaky last time." Lauren turned to me, not to argue, not to say she'd already taken care of it, but to nod. "Mom, would you?" That was the moment. The moment my daughter, who once clung to my legs after bad dreams, who once wrote me letters about gratitude, asked me to go scrub a toilet so her mother-in-law could pee in peace. And I said yes, because I didn't know what else to say. The powder room sparkled. Every surface had already been wiped once, then again just before dinner. But I followed orders and gave it one more pass. The marble countertop gleamed beneath the warm lighting. The mirror was spotless, not a fingerprint in sight. I even folded the hand towels into neat fans, like they do at hotels Lauren can't afford to stay at without someone else footing the bill. My reflection stared back at me, hair frizzed from steam, eyes tired, mouth tight. I tried not to feel small. But that's what I'd been made into, something tidy, silent, and useful. As I stepped out into the hallway, voices drifted through the dining room door, just hushed enough to signal something not meant for my ears. Blanche's voice, low but clear. "I see why you keep her around. She's quiet and cheap, not bad for live-in help." I froze. A silence followed, one that stretched long enough to imply agreement. Then Lauren's soft laugh. "She doesn't mind. She likes helping." My legs locked. My heart did something worse, something heavy and irreversible. They didn't see me as a mother. They saw me as staff, and not even paid staff, just someone they could mold into usefulness. I retreated to the kitchen and stood still, hands gripping the edge of the counter. I didn't cry, not yet. Minutes passed. Then Jonathan appeared, grinning like a man who'd hosted a successful event. "That went well," he said, pulling out his wallet. I expected nothing. So when he pulled out a crisp $100 bill and placed it on the counter in front of me, I couldn't speak. "Thanks for everything tonight," he said casually. Blanche was impressed. "This is just a little something, for the extra effort." I looked at the bill. It might as well have been a slap. He didn't say gift. He didn't say because we love you. He said extra effort, like I'd worked a shift, like I was the cleaning lady who stayed past closing. I stared at the money, unable to breathe. "Keep it," he added, mistaking my silence for modesty. "You earned it." Then he patted my shoulder and left the room. I didn't touch the bill. I couldn't, because it wasn't just a piece of currency, it was proof. Proof that they saw me as someone to tip, not someone to thank, not someone they loved, but someone who made things easier. I stood in that kitchen until the dishwasher finished its cycle and the house went quiet. Later, I wandered into the study to grab a book I'd left earlier that afternoon. The lamp was still on. Jonathan's briefcase sat open on the floor. A few folders had spilled across the rug, along with a receipt poking out of a yellow envelope. I bent to gather them and then paused. The name at the top of the receipt wasn't his, B. Miller. But the mailing address? It was Lauren's company. Her business logo printed on the return label, her firm's office listed as the billing destination. The invoice was recent, large, thousands of dollars, and not for interior design services. It was for consulting and media strategy. I frowned. I wasn't sure what kind of consulting a man like Jonathan needed, but I was sure that B. Miller wasn't a client. Something about the envelope felt wrong. I tucked the document back where I'd found it, but something in me shifted. First, I was the help. Now I was seeing things that didn't add up. I went to bed that night with the smell of lemon cleaner still on my hands and the weight of questions sitting heavy on my chest. Something was off. And I had just begun to notice how deep that rabbit hole went. I didn't leave a note. Didn't pack more than a single overnight bag. No dramatic goodbyes, no confrontation, just slipped out the door at dawn, with my cardigan over my nightgown and the $100 bill still untouched on the counter. I waited for someone to notice. Waited for the phone to ring, for Lauren to panic, for Jonathan to send a message asking where I'd gone. Even just a, "Did you take the trash out before you left?" But the silence was absolute. 2 days passed. Then 3. Nothing. Not even a missed call. I rented a small unit on the east side of town. A one-bedroom walk-up with peeling paint and an old ceiling fan that ticked like a metronome in a funeral march. The bed sagged in the middle. The fridge hummed like it had a cold. But it was mine. paid for with my meager savings, which I hadn't touched in years because I never thought I'd need to be alone again. The first night, I sat on the floor with a can of soup and a spoon, no bowls unpacked yet. I kept the porch light off. It felt too cheerful. On the third day, I walked to the corner grocery store and bought a tiny bouquet of daisies, white and yellow. I don't know why. They didn't match the mood. I placed them on the windowsill and stared at them until the sun went down. Lauren still hadn't called. I checked twice to make sure my phone was working. I even texted her a single word. Okay. Just that. A breadcrumb. Nothing came back. I watched old sitcoms on low volume until 2 a.m., then moved to staring at the ceiling. At some point, I started to wonder if maybe I'd actually died and no one had noticed. Like those stories you hear about people who pass away in apartments, undiscovered for weeks. Only I hadn't died. I just left, and no one cared. By day 5, I stopped checking my phone. I turned off notifications and put it in a drawer. The silence was too sharp. I sat on the balcony that night, knees drawn to my chest, wrapped in a wool blanket. A young couple across the courtyard argued about pizza toppings. A dog barked one floor below. Life was moving on. Everywhere, but with me. And it hit me, bone deep and cold, that I hadn't just disappeared from their house. I had disappeared from their world. Lauren had always been the center of my universe. Even when she was selfish, even when she was cruel, I still shaped my days around her. When she was little, it was peanut butter sandwiches cut into triangles and waiting outside ballet class with a water bottle. When she was older, it was late-night editing of her college essays and quiet celebrations after scholarship results. When she got married, I let her set the rhythm. Holidays, birthdays, the occasional impromptu brunch. Even after I moved in, I never claimed space. I never asked for her to revolve around me, but I thought I was part of her sky. I thought at the very least I was a star she still saw sometimes. But now, I realized I'd been a lamp she turned on when it suited her, and now she'd simply forgotten to plug me back in. That truth settled on me like dust. Heavy, undeniable, suffocating. It was raining when I decided I couldn't sit alone any longer, not because I missed them, but because I needed to move, to do something, anything that didn't involve silence or staring at walls that wouldn't speak back. I pulled on my raincoat and walked 2 blocks to the pharmacy, just to pick up vitamins, maybe a newspaper. Inside, it smelled like disinfectant and mint gum. I moved slowly past the aisles until I heard a voice I recognized, faint but unmistakable. "I thought that was you, Mrs. Collins." I turned. The woman behind the counter was younger than I remembered. Dark curls pulled back in a ponytail. Gold name tag, Angela. "I used to work the counter when you'd come in with Mrs. Whitmore," she said, smiling. "Still helping out at the big house?" I froze, uncertain how to answer. "I'm not there anymore." "Oh, well, she's been in a few times recently. Confused about some money stuff, actually. Said she had weird charges showing up and was thinking of going to the bank." My breath caught. "She said that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Angela nodded. "Something about withdrawals she didn't remember authorizing. I think she thought it was a fraud thing. She was going to ask her son or daughter-in-law, I forget." I left the store without buying anything. Outside, the rain had lightened to mist, but my hands shook, like I'd stepped into a storm. Blanche had noticed something, and Lauren hadn't told me. That night, I sat at my little kitchen table, laptop open, heart racing. When Lauren started her business, she'd put me down as a silent partner, mostly symbolic, but it had come with administrative access to some of the early banking platforms. I assumed I'd been removed long ago, but my login still worked. And once I was in, I knew something was wrong. Not just one thing, many things. Transfers from personal accounts labeled consulting reimbursement. Monthly deposits from an account listed only as BW Holdings. Expenditures categorized as event prep that coincided with times I knew Blanche had been out of town or unwell. Thousands of dollars, all tied to Blanche. But the records didn't show her as an investor. No formal agreements, no contracts, just vague notes, gift, family support, preferred client deposit. The money trail wasn't clean, and Lauren had never mentioned any of it to me. She had told me Blanche was helping them get ahead. She hadn't said she was funneling money through disguised transactions. I sat frozen, screen glowing back at me. What if the humiliation I'd felt wasn't even the worst part? What if I hadn't just been treated like help, but like a shield? What if I was part of the act to keep Blanche docile? The thought made me nauseous. I closed the laptop slowly, hands trembling. The air in the apartment felt too thin, too stale. Everything inside me wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered into the dark, "What have you done, Lauren?" The numbers didn't lie. They whispered, screamed, and hissed, and I followed them, line by line, like breadcrumbs dropped in the dark. My laptop was warm beneath my palms. The screen glowed softly in the dim apartment light as I scanned the financial records of Lauren's business. The account was under her company's name, but the money moving in and out had fingerprints I recognized, Blanche's. There were deposits labeled BWW. Holdings, often in round figures, $5,000, $7,200, $8,000, timed perfectly before travel photos and luxury purchases on Lauren's social media. But what stood out most were the memos, consulting fees, retainer, architectural advisory, and sometimes just one word, thanks. There were no contracts, no project outlines, no deliverables, yet over $38,000 had been moved from Blanche's accounts to Lauren's company in under 6 months. I pulled up a fresh document and began taking notes, cross-referencing dates with receipts, matching timestamps with Instagram posts, and it got worse. The largest transfers happened when Blanche had been hospitalized, when she'd posted about migraines and fatigue, when Jonathan was traveling and Lauren had posted a story about holding the fort. She hadn't just taken the money, she'd planned around when Blanche would be weakest, least attentive, most vulnerable. I minimized the banking window and opened a private browser. My heart thumped as I typed Lauren's name and navigated to a username I remembered her once bragging about, one she used only for her close friends. The account was still there. Photos of wine, spa weekends, designer purses with hashtags like Earn It and #grind season, and then a caption that stopped my breath cold. Elder money's easier than inheritance. No waiting, no emojis, no laughter, just those words, brazen, casual, cruel. Another post dated 2 weeks ago showed a photo of a meal at a 5-star restaurant. Caption, treating the woman who keeps the checks coming. Make them feel like royalty and they'll never notice the drain. Bile rose in my throat. I clicked deeper, through tagged photos, old comments. The pattern was undeniable. She wasn't just stealing, she was proud of it. She saw Blanche as an open faucet and me as the sponge that kept things clean. Every smile at dinner, every glass I'd washed, every toilet scrubbed had been a stage set, a performance to support the illusion that Blanche was respected, appreciated, needed. I had been part of the con and it had worked until now. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, fists clenched. Lauren hadn't just betrayed Blanche, she had betrayed the person who raised her. Me. I didn't sleep, not really. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, the ceiling swimming in shadow, wondering if love could survive this kind of betrayal. By morning, I had a plan, a terrible one, but I needed answers. Facts. Something beyond the receipts and smug captions. So I called Cheryl, an old friend who still worked at the bank Lauren used for the company accounts. She didn't recognize my number, but her voice lit up when she heard my name. "Martha, Lord, it's been a while. How are you?" I tried to sound calm. "I'm okay. Hey, I have a question. Something I probably shouldn't ask, but it's important." I hesitated, then lowered my voice. "Do you know if Lauren has any special access to Blanche Whitmore's accounts?" A pause, a breath, then softly, "She has power of attorney." My stomach dropped. Cheryl continued, It was filed last year. Full access, not just bill pay. She can make withdrawals, move investments, approve transfers. I remember because the paperwork was unusually rushed. Did Blanche come in to sign it? No, Cheryl said, cautious now. It was delivered, with signatures already done. I thanked her and hung up. Lauren had full control. She hadn't convinced Blanche. She'd bypassed her. Or worse, pressured her while she wasn't well. I was still reeling when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a message played. "Hi, Lauren, it's Elliot. Not sure if this is your direct line. Jonathan gave me this number ages ago when you were still handling payroll stuff. Anyway, just confirming we're good for the $15,000 transfer from Blanche's account to the resort fund. Want to finalize that by end of day. Talk soon. Click." I sat in silence. Elliot, Jonathan's old friend, had just told me, thinking I was Lauren, that they were about to move $15,000 of Blanche's money into an investment. A fake one? A real one? It didn't matter. Lauren wasn't just dipping into Blanche's finances for lifestyle fluff. She was laundering it into something bigger, something that had paperwork, co-conspirators, possible criminal charges. My hands trembled as I deleted the voicemail, but not before saving a backup, just in case. Later that afternoon, I remembered something else. Something Blanche had said once, quietly, while sipping tea in the garden during a rare moment alone. She'd been lightheaded that day. "Oh, silly me," she'd said with a laugh. "I keep forgetting to refill my blood pressure meds. Lauren's supposed to pick them up. She forgets sometimes." I hadn't thought anything of it then, but now it twisted in my gut. What if she hadn't forgotten? What if making Blanche weak, confused, pliable was part of the plan? I pressed my hands to my temples, breath quickening. Was this theft or something worse? Manipulation? Neglect? Abuse? I didn't know what to call it, but it felt like watching my daughter drown and wondering if she'd jumped in with rocks in her pockets. That night, I stood at the window of my small apartment watching headlights pass like ghosts. My phone was heavy in my hand. One call could end this. One call to Blanche, or the bank, or the police. But what would that make me? A mother or a traitor? I drove to Blanche's estate, gripping the steering wheel like it might disappear if I let go. The manila folder beside me felt radioactive. Inside, screenshots, statements, timestamps, cold, hard proof. Of what? Of theft, of betrayal, of a daughter I no longer recognized. The iron gates swung open slowly as I pulled into the circular drive. The manicured hedges, the glittering fountain, the symmetry of it all. It felt like entering a stage, the scene already set. Blanche opened the door herself. No housekeeper, no assistant, just her, in a crisp blue sweater and pearl earrings, her silver hair pulled back like armor. "Martha," she said, stepping aside. "Come in." Her voice was polite, clipped, but not warm. We sat in her sunroom. China cups, lemon cookies neither of us touched. I placed the folder between us on the glass table. I didn't want to believe it. I began, my voice hoarse. But I checked everything twice, and then again. Blanche opened the folder. For 10 minutes, she didn't speak. She flipped through account records, paused at the social media screenshots, scanned the deposit logs, then she exhaled sharply like a balloon deflating. "So," she said, just that. One word. I couldn't read her face. "I wish I had better news," I said quietly. She looked up. "You have perfect news," she replied, her voice suddenly steel. "You confirmed something I've suspected for a long time." My breath caught. "You knew?" I knew something was wrong. I didn't know the scope. She stood, walked to the window. I thought maybe I was getting old, forgetting things, being too generous. I wanted to believe Lauren was helping out of love. She turned to me. "But I'm not senile, and I'm not stupid," I swallowed. "Blanche, this could turn legal, maybe criminal." "Oh, it will," she said, sharp as glass, "but not before I see their faces. I want to watch them realize they've been found out. I want to serve them the truth on the very china they think they deserve." She crossed the room in 3 graceful steps, picked up her phone and dialed. "Lauren, darling," she said sweetly. "Dinner tomorrow night. Just the 3 of us. There are some financial details I need to run by you. Yes, it's important. I'll see you at 7. She hung up without waiting for questions. Then she turned to me. "Would you do me the honor of joining us in the study, not as a guest, as the one who brought the truth?" I stared at her. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure," Blanche said, and for the first time since all this began, I saw something like kindness in her eyes. We both deserve to watch this end. Blanche didn't just plan a dinner, she orchestrated a reckoning. After our call with Lauren, she turned to me and said, "I need you to come early tomorrow, there's paperwork." Paperwork? Turns out Blanche had been here before, not with Lauren, with her ex-husband. "He was charming, brilliant, and utterly heartless," she told me that night over brandy. "I trusted him with everything, and when I finally opened my eyes, half my fortune had vanished into shell accounts in the Caymans." She paused, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. "I swore no one would ever do that to me again," which is why she'd quietly kept emergency safeguards, alternate POAs, a discreet legal team, a private auditor, all untouched until now. That afternoon, she activated them. She signed a revocation of Lauren's financial authority and handed it to her attorney to deliver to the bank first thing next morning. Then she turned to me. "Martha," she said, placing a small stack of documents in front of me, "until this is over, I need someone I trust to manage the properties." I stared at the papers. "Me? You're the only one who hasn't lied to my face." I tried to protest, "But I'm not." "You're meticulous, cautious, and you care. That's more than I can say for the professionals I've hired." I signed, hands trembling. We spent the rest of the evening mapping the confrontation. Who would sit where, when to reveal the folder, how to time the lawyer's arrival. And finally, the pièce de résistance, inviting a private dinner, but arranging for Blanche's lawyer, accountant, and a bank liaison to wait silently in the adjacent parlor. They'd be listening to every word. If Lauren or Jonathan lied, we'd have witnesses. By the time I left Blanche's estate that night, my hands were icy. My heart thundered against my ribs. I didn't sleep, didn't eat. I just stood at my apartment window, watching the sky turn dark, then gray, then pale again. At 5:40 the next evening, I was back at Blanche's. The house was candlelit, elegant, discreet. On the surface, a quiet dinner among family. But the study next door held quiet professionals in suits, each with notepads and legal files. Blanche was poised, dressed in navy silk, her lipstick a perfect shade of war. I felt like a soldier going into battle with shaking knees. At 6:59, headlights curved up the drive. Blanche looked at me once, eyes steel, mouth calm. "Ready?" I nodded. But the truth? I had never been more terrified in my life. They arrived exactly on time. Lauren in a pale pink blouse, her makeup flawless. Jonathan in a tailored blazer, holding a bottle of expensive wine they hadn't paid for. Blanche greeted them like a seasoned actress, all warmth and gracious charm. "Oh, you two look lovely. Come in, come in." They had no idea. None. The dining room was set impeccably. Candles flickered. Silverware gleamed. A small string quartet played softly from speakers in the corners, masking the tension like perfume masks sweat. Jonathan complimented the roast. Lauren kissed Blanche's cheek. "Martha won't be joining us tonight?" she asked, taking a seat like she owned the place. Blanche smiled. "She's around, but tonight is about family business." Jonathan perked up. "New projects?" Blanche took her time. She poured wine. She asked about their week. And then slowly, she turned to Lauren and placed a thin folder on the table. "Darling," she said, almost affectionately. "Do you remember these?" Lauren frowned. "Bank statements?" "Yes," Blanche said, voice cooling. "Specifically, statements showing $47,000 moved from my personal accounts to your business, with no agreements, no receipts, and no services provided." Jonathan's smile vanished. Blanche continued. "And these?" She held up color-printed Instagram posts. "Your private page. Old money moves fast if you flatter them enough. Managing the old lady's cash is easier than finding clients. Lauren's face drained. Wait, that was just sarcasm. Private jokes. You know how people post things. Blanche lifted a hand. Then explain this. She placed a single sheet of paper between them. An upcoming $15,000 transfer from my account to a non-existent resort fund, flagged this morning by my bank, with your husband listed as the point of contact. Jonathan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Lauren's voice sharpened. Blanche, I think there's some confusion. These were all approved. You told me I could... No, Blanche said, voice like frost. I told you to pay my phone bill and help schedule my travel. I did not authorize investments, or withdrawals, or lies. She stood, and then... She nodded toward the side door, and I stepped in. My hands were cold, my knees trembled, but I walked into the dining room with that same manila folder I'd clutched for days. Lauren turned, mouth falling open. You? Me, I said, and the trap snapped shut. The tension became a living thing in the room, sharp, expectant, and electric. The quartet's final note faded, leaving us in a hush so thick I felt I could taste it on my tongue. Lauren's eyes darted between Blanche and me, confusion and panic warring in her pupils. Jonathan cleared his throat, stepping toward her defensively. Mom, Mrs. Whitmore, this is impossible, he began, voice shaky. There must be a mistake. Blanche regarded him coolly. I have the statements, Jonathan. They're legitimate, unless you want to claim ignorance. Jonathan swallowed hard. He glanced at Lauren, perhaps seeking a cue, but found only disbelief. Then he pointed at her, cornered and desperate. This was Lauren's doing. She convinced me. His voice cracked. I trusted her. Lauren's face paled further, but she shook her head fiercely. No, don't put this all on me. I told Jonathan about the consulting idea. He agreed. He handled the accounts. Twist 1. Jonathan blamed Lauren entirely. He painted her as the mastermind, himself a pawn. In that moment, I understood how fear fractures loyalty, and how easy it is to scapegoat someone you once loved. Blanche raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Lauren swallowed, framing herself as victim. He was vulnerable. He wanted to believe he was part of something bigger, but he realized too late. Jonathan's shoulders slumped. Blanche leaned forward. And you, Jonathan, are fine with accepting $28,000 in consulting fees that never existed? He didn't answer. Couldn't. Lauren, exposed, let her composure break. She stood. You don't understand, Mom. This isn't just money. This is my future. I built something here. You built it with stolen funds, Blanche interrupted. With your husband's approval. You didn't just cross a line, you erased it. Lauren's hand darted behind her, trembling, looking for a phone. I'll call the police. I'll report identity theft. Mom's hacking into my business accounts. A hush. One of Blanche's attorneys emerged from the study's doorway. She cleared her throat, her voice calm and authoritative. Mrs. Collins is a legitimate founding partner in this company. Her name is on the original incorporation documents, right alongside Lauren's. Lauren stopped. Another attorney stepped forward. We can confirm her signature appears on early stock option agreements. She is entitled to access the books. She did not commit a crime. She revealed one. Lauren glared. Her eyes flashed with fury and betrayal. That's when Martha reached into her coat pocket, pulling out the small framed letter. She placed it on the table, unfolded and pristine. Lauren's knees buckled, eyes wide. Martha's voice held steady, rising over the crackle of tension. You wrote this. You thanked me. You said you were proud. Then you threw it away. She looked directly at Lauren. Some things can be discarded, but not forgotten. Not by me. Lauren looked away, mouth twitching. The room felt unbearably small. Silence stretched. Blanche stood, smoothing her navy skirt with deliberate calm. Martha Collins has shown integrity, transparency, and more courage in one evening than your daughter has shown in a lifetime. Blanche spoke with measured kindness. "Martha, you have my full admiration. I am transferring sole management rights of my real estate holdings to you, effective immediately. You will oversee every contract and account, with full authority and full respect." Martha blinked, overwhelmed, gratitude and disbelief warring in her gaze. Lauren let out a small, desperate sound, nearly a sob. Jonathan slumped, withdrawing, eyes glassy. Blanche reached out and with deliberate ceremony began recounting the steps Lauren and Jonathan must take. Refund every dollar, sign confession of misappropriation, relinquish claim to any partnership or control in any assets derived from stolen funds. Lauren's voice broke. "Mom, please, I need your forgiveness." Blanche's answer was final, measured with the cold grace of a judge delivering a verdict. "Lauren, forgiveness does not equate to impunity. You will face the consequences, but you won't face them alone." Then she turned to me, and there it was, the moment of release. Lauren, face pale and framed with tears, walked past me. Jonathan followed, wordless, shoulders slumped. They passed through the grand foyer, through the iron gates, in silence. The door clicked shut behind them. I exhaled. Blanche turned and extended her hand up. "Martha Collins, my partner, my friend." Light from the foyer spilled across us in long golden beams. The first true warmth I felt that evening. I squeezed her hand, tears spilling over. Blanche smiled. "Sometimes the people who leave quietly return with thunder." And in that moment, I knew I wasn't quiet anymore.